Welcome back. We start from Afghanistan, where nearly 100 Taliban fighters and Afghan army soldiers have been killed in the last 24 hours. Both sides claim to have caused heavy damage during fighting in 18 of the country's provinces. Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid says fighters mounted 45 attacks, wounding 39 Afghan security officials. The Afghan army says their forces carried 25 operations and 13 airstrikes against the Taliban. The army says 6 other Taliban fighters have been wounded in the attacks. Meanwhile, the Afghan government has finalized its list of delegates for a meeting with the Taliban in China to discuss the intra-Afghan peace process. On Monday, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani agreed to meet the Taliban in Beijing after talking with the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Ghani's spokesperson Sadiq Siddiqui said this meeting could make way for a broader dialogue between the two sides. Siddiqui said the Afghan government will soon share its list of delegates with the Chinese government. The spokesperson said the meeting's date will be announced by Beijing soon. Meanwhile, the Taliban have yet to make any comment on peace talks with the Afghan government in China. The U.S. House of Representatives Intelligence Committee will open public hearings in its impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump next week. The House is investigating whether Trump abused the powers of his office by pressurizing Ukraine for personal political gain.
The top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, George Kent, will testify on November 13. While former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, will appear on November 15.
Those open hearings will be an opportunity for the American people to evaluate the witnesses for themselves, to make their own determinations about the credibility of the witnesses, but also to learn firsthand about the facts of the president's misconduct.
If the House votes to approve the articles of impeachment, the Republican-controlled Senate would then hold a trial on whether to remove Trump from office.
U.S. President Donald Trump and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan will meet in Washington on November 13th. The two leaders decided to meet after discussing the latest situation in northeastern Syria on the phone. Trump said Erdogan told him Turkey has captured ISIS terrorists, including the wife and sister of al-Baghdadi. The U.S. president said among other topics, they discussed ways to end hostilities with the Kurds. Meanwhile, Erdogan said both leaders spoke of bilateral trade goals and the fight against terrorism. The meeting comes amid strong pressure by U.S. Republican and Democratic senators on Trump to levy more sanctions on Ankara. Israel says it is assisting Syrian Kurds who are affected by Turkish military operations. Deputy Foreign Minister Zipi Hotovle says Tel Aviv sees them as a counterweight to Iranian influence and is advocating for them in talks with the U.S. Turkey launched its operation against Kurdish fighters after the U.S. withdrew troops from northern Syria in early October. Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister told Parliament the offer to assist Syrian Kurds had been taken up. Syrian Kurdish officials could not immediately be reached for comment.
Israel indeed has a salient interest in preserving the strength of the Kurds and the additional minorities in the North Syria area, as moderate and pro-Western elements who proved their utility many times over the years, especially during the fighting against ISIS.
In Yemen, 6 people, including 4 civilians, have been killed in an attack on a military base in the coastal town of Mocha. Medics say 26 others were wounded in the attack, which also damaged a hospital run by Doctors Without Borders. A Yemeni military official said Houthi rebels launched 4 ballistic missiles and drones towards a military position in Mocha, but the rebels have made no claim of responsibility. The attack comes after weeks of relative calm in Yemen and the signing of a peace deal between the government and the southern separatists. Iran says it has cancelled the accreditation of a UN nuclear inspector over its suspicions of foul play. Tehran's Atomic Energy Organization said the inspector set off an entry checkpoint alarm at the Natanz plant last week. It said there was enough evidence to raise concerns she could be carrying what it called a suspect product. Tehran says she was denied entry and the International Atomic Energy Agency has been notified about the incident. Iran's IAEA representative will present a full report on the matter in Vienna today. The inspector in question has since left Iran for the IAEA Vienna's headquarters. Under 2015's landmark JCPOA deal, Iran's nuclear plants are continuously monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. At least 4 people were killed and 35 others wounded when Iraq's security forces used live rounds to disperse protesters gathered on a bridge in central Baghdad. Baghdad has been hit by the biggest wave of anti-government demonstrations in decades.
Thousands are taking part in anti-government demonstrations in the capital and southern provinces. Protesters blocked Ahrar, Shuhada and Babul Muaddam bridges to bring the country to a standstill. They also blocked the entrance to the Nasiriyah oil refinery in southern Iraq, prompting a fuel shortage. A government official says the oil refinery blockade has cost the country over $6 billion. Meanwhile, the US has condemned the killing and kidnapping of unarmed demonstrators.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has asked global community to play its role in immediate lifting of siege in Indian-occupied Kashmir. PM Khan made this call in a meeting with President of Council of States of Swiss Federation Jean-René Fournier in Islamabad. In the meeting, PM Khan told René about the worsening humanitarian crisis in the valley and its grave impact on regional security. The Pakistani Prime Minister said India's illegal actions in violation of international law and UNSC resolutions are jeopardizing regional peace. René has earlier condemned blatant human rights violations in occupied Kashmir, calling for a peaceful resolution of the issue. New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout in the valley has now entered 95th day. The New York Times has once again highlighted the plight of women in Indian-occupied Kashmir under curfew. The leading US newspaper published a report sharing the misery of women journalists, mothers, daughters and sisters in the besieged valley. It said female photojournalist was harassed by Indian forces as they threatened to assault and torture her for covering protests. Journalist Masra Zahra refused to stay silent, saying she is one of the few voices coming out of the valley, otherwise gagged by India. The report says Indian occupying forces kidnap females and shift them to unknown jails, where their families fearing the worst. The report said women can't leave their homes because of the fear of being abducted and harassed by Indian soldiers. Pakistan says over 10,000 Sikhs from India and other parts of the world will attend the Kharagpur Corridor inauguration. The opening ceremony will be performed by Prime Minister Imran Khan on Saturday. At a weekly news briefing, Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammad Faisal said about 5,000 pilgrims will come from India. The spokesperson said Kharagpur is a dedicated corridor for the people coming from India to pay respect and return the same day. He said Pakistan has waived the pilgrims from carrying passport for the 550th celebrations as a special gesture. The spokesperson regretted the Indian posture of not reciprocating to Pakistan's peace overtures for resolution of all outstanding disputes. Nepal has objected to a new map released by New Delhi showing the disputed area of Kalapani as Indian territory. In a statement, Nepal's foreign ministry said the area clearly belongs to Nepal.
It said the government will not accept any unilateral decisions. The foreign ministry says border-related issues should be resolved through diplomatic channels. India released the new map following its decision to split the state of occupied Jammu and Kashmir into 2 administrative territories. On the map, India's border cuts into Kalapani, which has been a source of contention between the 2 countries. The conflict persists as Indian troops have been deployed in the area for more than 50 years. Pakistan and China also raised objections over India's new political map.
In the United States, Muslim Democrats Ghazala Hashmi and Abrar Umesh have made history in Virginia's elections. In a surprise victory, Hashmi unseated incumbent Republican Glenn Sturtevant in the state Senate. Meanwhile, Umesh became the youngest woman to hold elected office in Virginia's history. Umesh is also the first Muslim woman to be elected in the state. Tweeting after her victory, Hashmi said the results show the status quo is no longer accepted. Two Muslim male Democrats, Ibrahim Samira and Sam Rasool, already serve in Virginia's General Assembly. The election has been described as a possible watershed moment for the once conservative southern state. More stories after a short break. Stay with us. A 20-year-old student has been killed and 20 people wounded in ongoing clashes in Bolivia. The fatality brings total death toll to 3. The tragedy struck in the central city of Cochabamba, where pro- and anti-regime activists skirmished. The town hall was also burned down in Morales' stronghold of Winto. Morales says the student was an innocent victim of hateful political groups promoting racial violence. Meanwhile, conservative opposition leader Luis Fernando Camacho has also called for Morales to resign. The 40-year-old politician has also called on the military to intervene. Morales has urged the military to serve the people and has so far remained neutral. 37 people have been killed and 60 wounded in an attack on a Canadian mining company convoy in eastern Burkina Faso. The company was ambushed 40 kilometers from the company's Bongyo mine. The company, Semafo, says the convoy's military escort vehicle was struck by an explosive device before gunmen opened fire. The gold mining business beefed up security last year when 2 of its mines in the country came under attack. The West African state has been racked by an insurgency that has killed hundreds of people in recent years. At the same time, the military has struggled to contain violence spilling over the border from neighboring Mali. 13 people have died in a road accident in Pakistan's southern Sindh province. The police say 5 others were injured in the accident. They say a passenger bus collided head-on with a rickshaw on the national highway in the Motihari district. Officials say one carriageway of the national highway has been closed after the accident. They say the bus passengers were traveling from Nawabshah to Karachi. In America, an environmentalist has been living a simple life in Florida, wanting to inspire people to make their lives healthier. For the past year, he has restricted himself to the food, medication, and other primary goods he grew or foraged from nature. More in this report.
The 33-year-old Rob Greenfield feasts on a bowl of papaya, coriander, and green moringa leaves he grew in his garden. He has transformed his tiny home into an urban farm where papayas, bananas, eggplant, and peppers all thrive. Greenfield put together an open-air kitchen of sorts where he keeps the honey produced from honeycombs.
So for the last year, I've been growing and foraging 100% of my food. No grocery stores, no restaurants, no beer at a bar. All of my food has either come from my garden or that I've foraged from nature.
He has built a toilet al fresco and uses leaves for toilet paper, minimizing all the production of trash.
And I currently grow my own toilet paper, and this is softer than anything you can buy at the store.
Greenfield launched his sustainable lifestyle in Orlando, a metropolitan area home to about 2.5 million people.
I want to inspire them to question their food and then to change their diets, to start to grow their own food, to support local farmers, and eat in a way that's better for the earth, our communities, and ourselves.
Not too many, but Rob has at least inspired some of his neighbors who say they want to adopt his simple living.
So this is rainwater, and that's what I drink when I'm in Orlando.
The United States and China have agreed to phase out tariffs imposed on each other's goods during their months-long trade war.
China's Commerce Ministry says Beijing and Washington should simultaneously end all tariffs if a Phase 1 trade deal is reached. The ministry spokesperson added the tariff cancellation is an important condition for any agreement. He said the trade war began with tariffs and should end with the cancellation of tariffs.
For the past 2 weeks, leaders from both sides had serious and constructive discussions on the proper resolution of each other's concerns. According to the agreement's process, they agreed to cancel tariffs in phases.
US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping may sign a deal this month to end the dispute. Meanwhile, China's state media says Beijing is also considering removing restrictions on poultry imports from the US.
The first Chinese freight train from Xi'an to Europe has reached Turkey after crossing Istanbul's undersea Bosphorus rail tunnel. The train arrived in Ankara, where Turkish and Chinese officials were there to welcome it. Turkey's Transport Minister Mehmet Kahir Turhan called it a historic moment and a new era in railway transport. He praised China's Belt and Road Initiative project using the railway to link Europe, China, Asia and the Middle East. He said the line has reduced the journey time between China and Turkey from a month to 12 days. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.